The emergency room at Portland General Hospital hummed, with its usual Friday night chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen moved through the fluorescent-lit corridors with practiced efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her white coat swishing as she navigated between gurneys and worried family members. "Dr. Chen, we've got an incoming," called out Nurse Martinez from the triage desk. "Male, approximately 30 years old, found unconscious in Forest Park. No ID, no wallet, nothing." Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly as she grabbed a fresh pair of gloves. "Vitals? Stable but concerning. Possible concussion, dehydration, some bruising." When they wheeled him in, Sarah's breath caught for just a moment. Even in his disheveled state, the man was striking. Dark hair fell across his forehead, obscuring a nasty bruise near his temple. His clothes were expensive but torn, as if he'd been running through the woods. Designer shoes caked with mud. Nothing about him made sense. "Sir, can you hear me?" Sarah leaned over him, checking his pupils with her penlight. "I'm Dr. Chen. You're at Portland General Hospital." His eyes fluttered open, startlingly blue against his olive skin. He stared at her for a long moment, confusion clouding his features, then winced in pain. "My head," he managed, his voice rough. "You have a concussion. Can you tell me your name?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. James. Call me James." Sarah noticed the pause, the way his eyes darted around the room as if assessing escape routes. In her 7 years as an ER physician, she'd learned to read patients. This man was afraid, but not of her medical care. He was afraid of being found. "Okay, James. Do you remember what happened to you?" "I fell. Hiking." The lie was smooth but unconvincing. "Hiking in a $3,000 suit." Sarah gestured to his torn clothing. "Without any identification?" Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a plea for discretion, a promise of secrets too dangerous to share. "I need to run some tests," Sarah said finally, choosing not to push. "Make sure there's no internal bleeding or serious brain injury. Are you allergic to any medications?" "No," he said quietly. "And thank you for not asking more questions." Over the next 3 hours, as Sarah ordered CT scans and blood work, she found herself drawn back to his room more often than necessary. James, if that was even his real name, was polite and cooperative, but there was an underlying tension in his posture, a watchfulness that never quite faded. "Good news," she said, entering with his results around midnight. "No brain bleed, no fractures. You're remarkably lucky." "Story of my life," he said with a bitter smile. "Lucky." Sarah pulled up a chair, her shift technically over, but curiosity keeping her there. "You know we're required to file a report when someone comes in without ID. The police will want to talk to you." Panic flashed across his face before he could mask it. "How long do I have?" "I could delay the paperwork until morning. Give you a head start, if that's what you need." "Why would you do that?" Sarah wasn't sure herself. Perhaps it was the vulnerability behind his careful facade. Perhaps it was the way he looked at her, not with the usual male bravado she encountered, but with genuine gratitude and something that resembled hope. "Because I've learned to trust my instincts about people," she said. "And my instincts tell me you're not dangerous, just desperate. You're right on both counts." He sat up slowly, wincing. "I'm not a criminal, Dr. Chen, but I am running from something. Someone, actually. Family." His laugh was hollow. "You could say that. Family that thinks they own me, that believes my life is a commodity to be traded for business deals and social status." Sarah thought of her own overbearing parents, immigrants who'd sacrificed everything for her education, who called weekly asking when she'd settle down, and marry the nice Chinese-American accountant they kept introducing her to. She understood, at least in part, the weight of familial expectations. "The arranged marriage trope," she said softly. "I thought that was mostly a historical thing. Not when you're the heir to a fortune and your last name opens doors most people don't even know exist." James ran a hand through his hair, then flinched at the pain. "I was supposed to get married last weekend, to a woman I've met exactly 3 times. A merger of dynasties, they called it. I called it a prison sentence." "So you ran." So I ran. He looked directly at her, his blue eyes intense. I ditched my phone, my cards, everything they could trace. I've been living in that park for 3 days, trying to figure out my next move. Brilliant plan, obviously. Despite the gravity of his situation, Sarah smiled. Well, your next move should probably involve some food and a safe place to sleep. You're discharged, medically speaking, but you shouldn't be alone tonight. Concussion protocol. I don't have anywhere to go. Can't check into a hotel without ID. The words were out of Sarah's mouth before she could reconsider them. You could stay at my place just for tonight. I have a guest room and I'm off tomorrow. I can monitor your condition. James stared at her in disbelief. You don't even know me. I know enough, and I took an oath to do no harm. Sending you back to the park with a head injury violates that oath. She stood, trying to sound more professional than she felt. It's a medical decision, that's all. But they both knew it wasn't. Sarah's apartment was a modest one-bedroom in the Pearl District, filled with medical journals, half-finished mugs of tea, and walls covered in photos from her travels during residency. She'd always been too busy building her career to worry much about interior design. Make yourself comfortable, she said, pulling blankets from the hallway closet. The couch is actually pretty decent to sleep on. I've passed out there more times than I can count after double shifts. James stood in her living room looking both grateful and uncomfortable, like a wild animal that had been unexpectedly offered shelter. I should tell you my real name. Only if you want to. It's Alexander Hastings. He watched her face carefully, waiting for recognition. And there it was. Sarah had seen that name in headlines, on the sides of buildings, associated with one of the oldest and wealthiest families in America. Hastings Industries. Real estate, technology, pharmaceuticals, a business empire spanning generations. The Hastings Hotels chain, Sarah said quietly. Your family owns half of downtown Portland. Among other things. Alexander sank onto her couch, exhaustion finally overtaking him. My grandfather built it all from nothing. Now my father wants to merge with the Sutherland family through my marriage to their daughter, Victoria. It would create the largest privately held real estate portfolio in the Pacific Northwest. And you'd rather be homeless in Forest Park. I'd rather have a choice. His voice cracked slightly. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent my entire life being groomed to take over the company. The right schools, the right internships, the right social connections. I've never made a single decision that was truly my own. Sarah sat beside him, maintaining a professional distance but feeling anything but professional. What would you choose, if you could choose anything? I don't even know, Alexander admitted. That's the terrifying part. I have no idea who I am outside of being a Hastings, but I know I'm not this person they want me to be. The corporate robot who marries for business strategy and lives according to board meeting schedules. They talked until dawn, sharing stories that surprised them both with their intimacy. Sarah told him about her parents' disappointment when she chose emergency medicine over a more prestigious surgical specialty, about the boyfriend who'd left her because she worked too many hours, about her fear that she was becoming as married to her job as her parents wanted her to be married to someone suitable. Alexander talked about the suffocation of wealth, the way money created as many walls as it opened doors, about his passion for architecture that his father dismissed as a hobby, about his younger sister who'd escaped to Paris and been essentially disowned for marrying a musician. They'll find me eventually, Alexander said as sunlight began filtering through the curtains. They have resources I can't even begin to fight. Private investigators, connections with law enforcement, technology that can track almost anything. How long do you think you have? Days, maybe. A week, if I'm lucky. He looked at her with raw honesty. I should leave now, before I get you involved. This was already more than I deserved. But Sarah found herself saying, stay, at least until you figure out a real plan. You can't strategize when you're hungry and concussed and sleeping on the ground. Sarah, I'm serious. I have the space and I work crazy hours anyway. You'd barely see me. Even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. She wanted to see him, wanted to unravel the mystery of this man who'd walked away from a fortune for the chance at something real. Alexander studied her face for a long moment. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. Maybe because I see something in you I recognize in myself, Sarah said softly. Someone who's been living the life everyone else planned, wondering if there's more. The next 2 weeks unfolded like a fever dream. Alexander stayed hidden in Sarah's apartment during the day while she worked, and they spent her evenings and days off in a bubble that felt increasingly fragile and precious. He cooked elaborate meals with groceries she bought, having learned from a French chef his mother had insisted he study with. They watched old movies and argued playfully about everything from healthcare policy to whether Die Hard was a Christmas film. He sketched building designs on her notepads, his hands moving with the confidence of someone who'd found his true calling. And slowly, carefully, they fell in love. It happened in small moments, the way Alexander waited up for her after late shifts with tea and conversation. How Sarah found herself rushing home instead of staying for unnecessary paperwork, eager to see his smile. The accidental brush of hands that began to linger, the way they migrated from opposite ends of the couch to sitting close enough to feel each other's warmth. "I haven't told anyone about you," Sarah admitted one evening, curled up beside him as rain pattered against the windows. "My co-workers keep asking why I'm suddenly so happy. And what do you tell them? That I'm sleeping better. Which is technically true even if it's for entirely different reasons." She turned to face him, her heart hammering. "Alexander, what are we doing here?" "Living," he said simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm just living. No expectations, no cameras, no board members evaluating my every decision. But it can't last forever. I know." His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "They've escalated the search. I saw my picture on a news site yesterday. Missing heir, possible foul play. My father's playing it perfectly, the concerned parent rather than the puppet master. Will they find you? Eventually. But I'm not sorry I ran, Sarah. Even if it ends badly, these weeks with you have been worth it." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. "You've been worth it." When they finally kissed, it felt like inevitability and revelation all at once. Sarah had kissed other men, but never like this, never with the feeling that she was both discovering someone new and recognizing someone she'd always known. They made love that night with a tenderness born of mutual understanding. Two people who'd spent their lives meeting others' expectations, finally allowing themselves to want something just for themselves. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday morning. Sarah had just returned from a night shift when she found Alexander standing in her living room, his face ashen, staring at his phone, a new burner cell he'd reluctantly acquired. "They found my sister," he said without preamble, "in Paris. My father threatened to cut off her husband's visa, deport him back to Morocco where he fled violence. She's 8 months pregnant, Sarah. They're using her baby as leverage." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What do they want?" "For me to come home. To go through with the wedding. They've rescheduled it for 2 weeks from now. Victoria's family is threatening to pull out of the merger entirely if I don't appear." He looked at her with anguished eyes. "If I don't comply, my sister loses everything. Her husband, her life in Paris, possibly her child's father. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've gone through every scenario." He moved to her, taking her hands in his. "I have to go back. I can't let Charlotte suffer for my choices." "So you'll suffer instead?" Sarah's voice broke. "You'll marry someone you don't love, live a life you hate, just to protect her." "She protected me our whole childhood, took the blame when I messed up, ran interference with our parents, gave me courage to even think about leaving." Tears streamed down his face. "This is my turn to protect her." Sarah wanted to argue, to find some brilliant solution that would save everyone. But she was a doctor, trained to recognize when a patient was terminal. Sometimes there was no cure, only the choice of how to face the inevitable. "How long do we have?" she whispered. "I told them I'd return tomorrow. I want one more night with you if you'll have me." They didn't sleep. They talked and held each other and memorized the feel of being together, knowing it was ending. Sarah called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, unable to bear the thought of spending their last hours apart. "Come with me," Alexander said suddenly, as dawn approached. "I know it's insane, But come with me. Not to the wedding, I wouldn't ask that. But to Portland. Stay in the city. Let me find a way to see you, even if it's stolen moments. As your mistress? Sarah pulled back, hurt. Sneaking around while you live your arranged life? As the person I love, he said fiercely. Yes, it would be complicated and painful and probably impossible, but the alternative is never seeing you again, and I can't accept that. I can't be someone's secret, Alexander. I've spent too long hiding parts of myself to make others comfortable. I won't hide this, what we have, like it's something shameful. Then what do we do? Sarah took a shaky breath, forcing herself to think practically despite her breaking heart. You go back. You protect your sister. You figure out if there's any way to untangle yourself from this wedding that doesn't destroy your family. And us? There is no us, not in any real sense. We had a beautiful, impossible few weeks. But I live in reality, Alexander. In my world, you can't just walk away from billion-dollar business deals and family dynasties because you fell in love with your ER doctor. You're not just my ER doctor, he said desperately. You're the only person who's ever seen me as just Alexander, not a Hastings, not an heir, not a business asset, just me. I know. Sarah kissed him one last time, pouring everything she felt into it, and I'll always treasure that I got to meet just Alexander. But just Alexander doesn't exist in your real world, we both know that. When Alexander left her apartment that morning, Sarah didn't watch him go. She couldn't bear to see him walk away, back to the life she knew would consume him. She threw herself into work with renewed intensity, taking every available shift, volunteering for the most difficult cases. Her colleagues whispered that Dr. Chen had returned to her old workaholic ways, but if anything, she was worse than before. Because now she knew what she was avoiding. Not just her overbearing parents or her own fear of vulnerability. She was avoiding the empty space in her apartment where Alexander had cooked dinner, the couch where they'd argued about movies, the bed where they'd discovered each other in the dark. 3 weeks after he left, Sarah saw the wedding announcement in the business section of the newspaper someone had left in the doctor's lounge. Alexander Hastings and Victoria Sutherland married in a private ceremony at the Hastings family estate. The photograph showed Alexander in a tuxedo, his new bride in designer white, both of them smiling those careful, controlled smiles that never reached the eyes. Sarah stared at that photo for a long time, looking for any trace of the man who'd sketched buildings on her notepads and made her laugh until she cried. But he was gone, buried under the weight of his name and his duty. She was about to throw the paper away when her phone rang. An unknown number. Dr. Chen. She answered automatically, expecting a pharmacy or lab result. Sarah. Alexander's voice, tight with emotion. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I thought I could do this, thought I could go through with it. We said our vows an hour ago and all I could think about was you. Alexander, you're married now. You shouldn't be calling me. It's not a real marriage. Victoria knows. I told her everything before the ceremony. About you, about running away, about wanting a different life. She's in love with someone else too, someone her family would never accept. We made an agreement. Sarah's heart stuttered. What kind of agreement? A business arrangement, nothing more. We'll appear together for family functions and official events, but otherwise, we live separate lives. She gets access to resources to help her girlfriend who's starting a non-profit. And I get... What do you get? A chance. His voice strengthened with determination. My father wanted this merger to secure his legacy. Fine. He has his merger. But I've been studying the company bylaws, and there's nothing that says I have to run it his way. I'm implementing new policies starting next week. Affordable housing initiatives, profit sharing with employees, environmental standards that will cost us millions in the short term, but are the right thing to do. He'll fight you. Probably. But I own 49% of the company through my mother's family, and she's finally standing up to him. Charlotte flew in from Paris yesterday. She and Victoria bonded immediately, funny enough. They're both fighting for the right to live authentically. We're building a coalition. Sarah felt hope rising despite her efforts to crush it. That's amazing, Alexander. Truly. But why are you telling me this? Because none of it matters if I don't ask you the most important question. He took a breath she could hear over the phone. I know I have no right to ask after everything, but Sarah, will you give me another chance? Not at sneaking around, not at being my secret. I want you in my life, openly and honestly. It won't be easy. There will be scrutiny and judgment and probably scandal, but I love you, and I'm done pretending that doesn't matter. You're married, Sarah repeated, but her resistance was crumbling. On paper, for legal and business reasons. But Victoria and I have already filed for separation. It'll take time to finalize, prenups and corporate complications, but we both went into this knowing it was temporary. A shield to buy us time to restructure our lives. He paused. I'm not asking you to wait indefinitely. I'm asking if you'll let me prove to you that I can be the man you deserve, the one who makes his own choices and stands by them. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering how he'd looked at her in the hospital that first night. How he'd trusted her with his secrets, how they'd built something real in the midst of his hiding. I need time, she said finally, to think about what this would really mean, dating someone like you, with your name and your world. I'm not sure I can handle that spotlight. I understand. Take all the time you need, but Sarah, I'm not going anywhere this time. I'm done running from what matters. 4 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of a newly opened building in downtown Portland. The Hastings Chen Community Health Center, read the sign above the entrance, gleaming in the autumn sunlight. It's perfect, she breathed, taking in the state-of-the-art facility that Alexander had designed himself. A free clinic for underserved populations, funded by the Hastings Foundation's new charitable arm. Her name alongside his, a partnership built on more than just romance. You're perfect, Alexander corrected, slipping his hand into hers. They'd been officially together for 2 months now, since his separation became public knowledge. The media had been predictably insane, Air Leave's new bride for mysterious doctor, but they'd weathered it together. Your father still not speaking to you? Sarah asked. He'll come around, or he won't. Either way, I've made my peace with it. Alexander pulled her close, right there in the lobby where anyone could see. I spent 32 years living for his approval. I'd rather spend the rest of my life earning yours. You already have it, Sarah said, rising on her toes to kiss him. Though I have to say, building me an entire health center is a bit over the top as a romantic gesture. Just wait until you see what I'm planning for your birthday. They laughed together, and Sarah marveled at how much had changed since that night in the emergency room. She'd taken a chance on a mysterious patient with no ID, never imagining he'd become her partner in every sense of the word. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Alexander was still untangling himself from years of his father's machinations, and Sarah was navigating the strange world of being attached to someone famous. Victoria had become an unexpected friend and ally, creating a modern family structure that confused gossip columnists but worked for them. But as they stood together in the building they'd created, a place where wealth and privilege would serve those who needed it most, Sarah felt something she'd been chasing her whole life without knowing it. Freedom. The freedom to choose love over expectation, courage over comfort, authentic connection over careful pretense. Ready to change some lives? Alexander asked, gesturing toward the waiting room where their first patients were already arriving. With you? Sarah squeezed his hand. Always. And as they walked forward together into their imperfect, complicated, beautiful new reality, Sarah understood that the best love stories weren't about fairy tale endings. They were about two people brave enough to write their own beginning. If you made it this far, don't forget to leave your comment, your like, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new stories. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.